Most Canadians see the free market as the best system in the middle of the pack internationally. Look at the country that's #1 on the free market. Our buddy Chairman Mao must be spinning in his grave thinking that he's got a bunch of people in communist China who think the free market is the way to go. Nigeria, India, look at these. Think of, you've got a third of the world, you've got 1 billion people in China, 1 billion people in India. And these people are thinking the free market is the engine of growth. So these are pretty remarkable consensus in these countries. Canada, we're out there at 68% who like this free market. And it's the same as the United States, which is quite interesting, that in both countries we actually think, about 7 in 10 of us think, that's the engine of growth. And again, we're in about the middle of the pack internationally, but following China. Wow. But here's an interesting one. Most see the growing gap between the rich and the poor. So, and this is again tracking since 1990, do you think the gap between the rich and the poor has widened, not changed, or narrowed? 2/3 of us think that the gap has widened between rich and poor. So in other words, the winners are winning more and the losers are losing more than it used to be in the past. And that's actually true if you look at the data. We're now moving to almost back to the Gilded era, of the 1880s and 1890s, and where you get the rich being very, very rich. You get the Rockefellers and Morgan and all the very wealthy Americans in oil and railroads and so on. So we have 2/3 of us think it's widened, 22% not changed, narrowed only 6%. So that's kind of interesting. What is even more interesting is 81% of Canadians agree that the government should narrow the gap between the rich and the poor. 80% of us. This is the majority of people who would vote Green, New Democrat, Liberal, and Conservative. We don't like this. We don't think it's right. And this is obviously tracking that's gone on for 20 years. Right now, there's no one issue kind of dominating. This hasn't really changed much over the last 6 months, and now we're into an election. 21% of us think the economy is the #1 issue, unemployment, 12, healthcare, environment, and so on. So it's basically no one issue is dominating. You can see historically there have been times when unemployment was the issue that people were concerned about. There were times when healthcare was the #1 issue. Every once in a while, the economy or the environment peaks through. The late 80s, you see environment. And then back here in 07, 08, typically there's some environmental disaster that whacks us, and then the environment suddenly becomes salient. And then finally, war and international conflict. And again, when something breaks out, that jumps to the top too.